privilege to be doing the second talk of Easter camp today. My name is Owen. I'm from Taiwan. I'm studying commerce at Melbourne Uni, and I'm also one of the leaders at STEP, which is our uni ministry if you haven't heard about it yet. Low-key, I don't actually do that much though, but anyways. Yesterday, Pastor Dave showed us that faith isn't just for religious people, but that in reality, whether we're religious or non-religious, we all exercise faith on a daily basis. Wait. Can we have Kate come up and do the Bible reading first, actually? Sorry, guys. So the passage we're going to be reading today is 1 Kings 18, verse 20 to 41. Thanks, Kate. Sorry, guys.
Hi, guys. It's an exciting passage. So, if you want, you can close your eyes and imagine the scene, because it's like a story, So it's like a narration. So, yeah, okay. 1 Kings chapter 18, verses 20 to 41. So Ahab sent word throughout all Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Elijah went before the people and said, "How long will you waver between two options? If the Lord is good, follow him. But if Baal is good, follow him." But the people said nothing. Then Elijah said to them, "I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left. But Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves, and let them cut it into pieces and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord, the God who answers by fire. He is God." Then all the people said, "What you say is good." Okay, let's go. Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, "Choose one of the bulls and prepare it first, since there are so many of you. Call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire." So they took the bull given them and prepared it. Then they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. "Baal, answer us!" they shouted. But then there was no response. No one answered. Then they danced around the altar they had made. At noon, Elijah began to taunt them. "Shout louder," he said. "Surely he is God. He is a God. Perhaps he is in deep thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he's sleeping and must be awakened." So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as that was their custom, until their blood flowed. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for the evening service. But there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. Then Elijah said to all the people, "Come here to me." They came to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, "Your name shall be Israel." With the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a trench around it, large enough to hold 2 seahs of seed. Sorry, I don't know what that is. He arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. He said to them, "Fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood." "Do it again," he said. They did it again. "Do it a 3rd time," he ordered, and they did it a 3rd time. The water ran down around the altar and even filled the trench. At the time of sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, Let it be known today that you are a God. You are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord. Answer me. So these people will know that you, Lord, are good, and that you are turning their hearts back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. When all the people saw this, they fell and prostrated and cried, "The Lord, He is good! The Lord, He is good!" Then Elijah commanded them, "Seize the prophets of Baal. Don't let them get away." They seized them, and Elijah had brought them down to Short Valley and slaughtered them there. And Elijah said to Ahab, "Go, eat and drink, for there is the sound of heavy rain."
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, I literally asked Kate to read this 20 minutes ago, so if you guys could give her another round of applause. Yep. So just now we were talking about how we all exercise faith on a daily basis. So basically yesterday we talked about how what that is looking at evidence, which leads to trust, and then leading to action after that. So that's from little things like which restaurant to eat at, to bigger things like asking out your future wife, or to huge things like what am I going to live my life for. So basically, ETA. Oh, wait, can you guys raise your hands if you're a New Jeans fan, actually? No? What the heck? Okay, never mind. I told Pastor Dave yesterday that you guys are going to love it, but oh well. But anyways, today we're going to explore whether these things we have faith in can hold up to the weight. Wait, I'll go back. You guys are too loud. Whether these things that we have faith in can hold up to the weight of our expectations. And maybe you're thinking does it really matter what we put our faith in, as long as we're happy? But today we're going to explore how what we choose to put our faith in can actually make or break everything. So let's pray before we begin today. Yep. Lord, please open our eyes to see the things we place our trust in for what they really are, to see whether they really have the power to give us what they promise. In Jesus' name, amen. Yeah, so before you all fall asleep, I'm going to give you a super easy GeoGuessr activity to bait engagement. So yeah, this was me last year on this exact weekend actually. So can anyone guess where this is? Oh, did anyone hear that? Okay, Yuri. Oh, let's go! I didn't even hit. Yeah, there's a crossing right there. It's the super famous big. Yeah, so you guys got it right. I was in Shibuya. You know, where the Shibuya incident happened. Sorry, that was a Jujutsu Kaisen reference if you're confused. But anyways, during this time last year, I was on exchange in Japan for 1 semester. Isn't that crazy? I don't know about you guys, but every now and then on my For You page, I see these Japan tourism thirst traps.
The next station is Shibuya.
Okay, yeah. So literally that was my life for 4.5 months. And if you've seen the super famous movie Your Name, the uni I went to was literally in the movie. That was my uni on the right. and look, that's me, right where Taki was, where he was trying to look for himself. So yeah, I also had all this food, all these sights, and all these experiences, and I swear I'm not just here to flex on you guys, but I swear I guess the point I'm trying to make is I think a lot of us would look at that and be yeah, that's so fun. I could never get bored of that. And honestly, I think I thought the same too. But if I'm being really honest, I think within a month I started to feel it was not what I hoped. Like, I started to think, like, man, this place kind of just feels like another place that I live in, with like both good but also bad parts about it. So I think that felt kind of disenchanting, especially because I've been wanting to go on this exchange for 4 years since I started uni. Because like, isn't this Japan? Like, isn't this supposed to be like super fun and exciting? And so when I was starting to feel a bit disenchanted about the whole thing, well, I met a girl. And like, sure, I've heard before that it's not wise to get romantically involved when you're on exchange because you're gonna leave in like half a year. But I'd always secretly hope, like, yeah, like, sure, like, true. But if she's a great fit, like, surely I could make it work. Like, a bit silly, I know. But, like, she was a Bible study leader. She spoke English and Japanese fluently. And, like, yeah, she was pretty cute, too. So, yeah, I guess even though I was starting to feel disillusioned about how happy Japan would make me, well, now I, like, quickly forgot about that because now I thought maybe this Japanese girl would make me happy. I don't know why I'm saying this to, like, 100 people. But I won't go into the details here, but if I were to like speed run the entire plot, basically we became good friends. I liked her. Turns out girl had a boyfriend. But they needed to break up. And she kind of said that she liked me too. But I kept misreading her signals, and I was like way too intense, and I kind of scared her off at the end, and the ending wasn't very pretty. So yeah, like again, like it was not what I hoped. But yeah, like your boy was like not coping at the end of all of this. Anyways, if you're curious about my Japan heartbreaks, try to stay awake because I'm gonna spill even more of that Japanese tea later on. But for now, I think we can kind of see that during my exchange, neither Japan nor the girl I met there could live up to what I hoped. My hopes that they would make me feel like, you know, like everything's just good and right. And for you, it might not be like a uni exchange or like a girl you like, but I'm sure you can think of other things in your life, things that you've really hyped up in your head before, but somehow they just didn't really live up to like what you were hoping for. Like maybe after lining up super early in the morning, you finally got a croissant from Loon, because TikTok said it's like the world's best croissant. And when you bit into it, it was like not what you hoped, because you're like, yeah, this is good, but I've had better. I didn't say that, this girl did. Yeah, don't come at me. Or maybe you've been going to the gym consistently for 3 months, thinking you'll turn into an alpha giga chad or be ready for your hot girl summer. But it was not what you hoped. And you're like, wait, why do I still look the same? But maybe even, like you even hit your goal physique, but it somehow still doesn't feel like enough. Or maybe you even got to date the person you've liked for ages. And after a few weeks, you're like, huh, like this isn't what I thought it would be. And like, again, it wasn't what you hoped. But whatever it is, I think that if you're human, oh wait, wrong side. We've all had moments where something that we thought would complete the vibe just kind of didn't. And we realized that it was not what we hoped. And you're left feeling like something's still not quite right. And so my goal for the next 25 minutes is to show y'all that our Bible story today isn't just some old religious story, but that actually it's about a story of people who, like us, were placing their trust in something that was not what they hoped. So yes, having faith in something that isn't what they hoped is exactly what the people in our story are doing today. But to set the scene a bit, even though it's like super easy to overlook, the people in this story are actually facing a far greater crisis than most of us will experience. And that's because they're facing a terrible drought. And I don't know about you, but when I hear the word drought, I'm like, okay, big deal. It's just like not raining for a bit. But the drought they're actually facing is like crazy. Because even though it's not explicitly mentioned in the part that Kate just read out, they actually have had neither rain nor dew for 3.5 years. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Interstellar. It's like my favorite movie. But at the start of the movie, the world is basically dying. And humanity is facing extinction because there's no rain and people are just surviving and barely hanging on. And there's a scene early in the movie where we see them eating dinner. And there's like literally one thing on the table, and it's corn, because that's the only crop that grows. But oh wait, there's like a cottage pie. Nah, that's made of corn too. So everyone is just like tired, dusty, and resigned. And so this kind of slow creeping despair is the world that we're actually stepping into today. Because again, it hasn't rained for 3.5 years, and that's not just inconvenient. It's actually like terrifying. Like your livestock are dying, your crops are all gone, mothers are watching their children go hungry, and the Yarra River is completely dried up, and you're seeing all the lime bikes on the riverbed. And imagine going to sleep every night, hoping that tomorrow is the day that rain will finally come. But day after day, you just wake up to nothing. And so, if you've ever felt hopeless, helpless, like the world's just broken and there's nothing you can do to fix it, that's what the drought in our Bible story today would have felt like. And that's the world that we're going to be stepping into today. And so, right in the middle of all of this suffering and hopelessness, we see one man step forward. His name is Elijah. And in the Bible, Elijah is basically what we call a prophet. And a prophet is someone who speaks on behalf of God, especially when people have forgotten who God is. And the people that he's speaking to isn't just like some random tribe, but they're the Israelites. And the Israelites are a nation that earlier in the Bible story had been rescued out of God, out of slavery, given a land to live in, and called to walk in relationship with him. Not because they're better than others, but because, as Pastor Dave mentioned yesterday, they were blessed by God to be a blessing to the whole world. But over and over again, they turned away from him and forgot the one who saved them. And so now in the middle of this drought, they're turning to something else again, hoping that it can give them what they need. And right before our passage today, Elijah meets up with the king of Israel, a guy called Ahab. And this king has actually helped lead the people away from God. And so Elijah told King Ahab to gather everyone on a mountain called Mount Carmel. And he says, bring all the people of Israel, bring the spiritual leaders of your religion, and not just a few of them, but all 450 prophets of a god named Baal. And Baal basically was a rain and vegetation god that a lot of people believed in back then. But remember, it's been 3.5 years and there's been no rain and not even any dew. So now the whole nation is gathering and the tension is thick. And it's kind of like this scene in Black Panther, where all the tribes, they've gathered in a huge circle and the drums are pounding, and everyone's watching. And it's this massive public moment to decide who the true king is. And so that's what's happening here. But instead of tribal leaders fighting for a throne, it's two gods standing in the middle of that circle. And one of them will answer, and one of them will stay silent. And yeah, the stakes in Black Panther were huge because the future of Wakanda hung in the balance. But here, the future of Israel, their crops, their children, their very lives are collapsing in real time. So unlike Wakanda, this isn't about politics, it's about survival. And they need rain, they need rescue, they need a God who actually shows up. And this is where Elijah challenges them boldly. And Elijah says, how long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him instead. And to understand this situation that they're in, I want you guys to look at this. You're standing on a platform, but it's not stable. It's burning and it's shaking and the ground beneath you is starting to crack open. And in front of you, there's two ladders. One of them looks new and polished, while the other one looks old and worn. But here's the scary part. Only one of these ladders is actually attached to the cliff above. Whereas for the other one, well, it's kind of just floating. And it goes up far enough to look all right, but once you get to the top, you'll realize it doesn't lead anywhere. And once you get there, it just collapses and you fall into the abyss down below. And the worst part is you won't find out which is which until you climb. And so that's the kind of decision that the Israelites are facing today. Because this cracking and shaking platform is the drought, and their whole nation is standing on it. And Elijah is asking them today, which ladder will you choose? But the people said nothing. And fair enough, I'd be paralyzed too if I was facing this choice. So Elijah says, let's test this. Let's each build an altar, one for Baal and one for the Lord, and we'll each prepare a sacrifice. And he says to the prophets of Baal, after you make those altars, then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire, he is God. So basically he's saying, if the altar catches fire supernaturally without anyone lighting it, physically lighting it on fire, then that must be the work of the true God. And everyone's like, yeah, that's a good idea. So all the people said to Elijah, what you say is good. So they've agreed to this challenge, and the prophets of Baal are going first. So they build their altar, they prepare the bull they're going to sacrifice, they put the pieces on the altar, and then they begin. In verse 26 it says, then they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. Baal, answer us, they shouted. But there was no response. No one answered. And they danced around the altar they had made. So this isn't just a polite little prayer circle. It's full-on hype mode. It's imagine you're doing a K-pop fan chant, and you're screaming oh, bah! While waving your light stick like your life depended on it. Because you would do anything for your idol to notice you. But instead of Jungkook, it's Baal. But still, again, there was no response. So Elijah starts trolling them. In verse 27, we see him yelling at the prophets of Baal, and he says to them, shout louder. Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought or busy or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened. And this part is kind of funny because in the original Hebrew, the part where Elijah says perhaps he is traveling could actually mean that perhaps he is taking a crap right now. So yeah, Hebrew is pretty interesting. So maybe we can turn this into a viral meme. But yeah, then it starts to get kind of disturbing in the story, because when shouting doesn't work, the prophets of Baal started to cut themselves. So in verse 28, so they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for the evening sacrifice. So now, instead of just dancing and shouting, they're desperate to get a response and are literally bleeding for their God. And earlier in verse 26, we saw that there was no response. No one paid attention. No one answered. I think 26, yeah. And so I mentioned at the start, even though they gave so much to their God, it was not what they hoped. And even after... Oh, wait, sorry, I jumped. So earlier they were only shouting and dancing, and now they're cutting themselves too. So will that make a difference? Will Baal now respond that they're actually doing so much and cutting themselves and bleeding for Baal? Well, here's what the Bible says in verse 29, or 28, I forgot. But there was no response, no one answered, no one paid attention. And so, yeah, like I mentioned at the start, even though they gave so much to their God, it was not what they hoped. And even after bleeding for their God, all they get is silence. And if you're like me, at this point of the story, you might be thinking cool story, bro, but that's crazy. I would never scream and shout to a God and dance around it and cut myself to get a response. But maybe, just maybe you shouted, danced, and bled in a different way. Or at least I know that I have. And to show you guys how, let's return to my heartbreak story in Japan. Because, yeah, I promised I would circle back, so let me reward those of you who stayed awake. So I remember when things were getting complicated with the girl I liked. And at first, I tried using just words. And I would spend so much time drafting these like super long texts I sent to her because I wanted to say everything just right. And I wanted to make sure that there were no misunderstandings and that I would come across as thoughtful, respectful, and emotionally mature. And I was just thinking that if I just said the right words, that she would see my good intentions and that she would like me back. And so that was my shouting. And then I started dancing. Not literally, but performatively. Because I would start to post stories with her in mind. And I would like scroll through like hundreds of like story views just to see if she's seen what I posted. And when she didn't, I'd like die a little inside. But I kept performing, hoping that the next time she would click on my story again. And so that was my dancing, hoping that she would notice, hoping that she would care. And when none of that worked, even though I didn't start cutting my skin, I think I started bleeding on the inside. So I was sitting in an onsen ice bath one night, sitting there for way too long until I couldn't feel anything. Because some part of me felt dead, and I thought maybe the ice will jolt me awake. But I also thought to myself, I wonder how she'll react if I fainted here and they sent me to the hospital. Because maybe if I fainted, then I'll be able to see that she cares. Yeah, kind of crazy. I guess it gets even worse. So like, I wasn't suicidal or anything, but I was so numb that I also didn't really care what happened to me either. And I remember walking on a train platform later that week, and just next to the tracks where trains were zipping by. And like in that numb, foggy headspace, I thought to myself, if I slipped right now, surely then she would care. And so that was my blood. So in our story today, the prophets of Baal gave everything they had. They gave their words, their passion, and their bodies all to a god that they thought would give them what they wanted. And I did the same, and although it wasn't with Baal, it was also with something that I gave my whole heart to. And just like the prophets of Baal, I was met with silence. No response, no one answered, no one paid attention. And so what I got wasn't just not what I hoped, but it was complete hopelessness and despair. And when I look back now, I think I know why I was shouting, dancing, and bleeding. Because deep down, I thought that if I could just get this girl, then I'd finally have enough. Then I'd finally be enough. And so when she pulled away, it didn't just hurt, but it felt like I would never have enough again. Because I felt like no one else would ever vibe with me as well as she did. And when she didn't feel the same way as I didn't just feel rejected, but I felt like I wasn't good enough. Like something about me wasn't worthy of being wanted. And maybe for you, it wasn't a girl, or it wasn't Japan. But I wonder, what are you looking to feel like you have enough and are enough? Like maybe you finally got into that dream course, like med, law, psych, physio, design, actuarial, whatever it is, you made it. And everyone's like, congrats, and you're like, haha, thanks. And yeah, part of you felt proud, like I actually did it. But the pressure didn't stop. And if anything, maybe it got worse. Because now there's a new bar, new expectations, and new people that you're comparing yourself to. And even though you actually got what you thought would make you feel like you made it, some days you wake up already feeling behind. And deep down, it still doesn't feel like enough. It's like, yeah, you actually got it, but now it also kind of owns you. Or maybe you finally found a group of friends, and you go to all the hangouts, the events, and you're in all the group chats, and like, it's not bad, it's actually pretty great. But sometimes when things quiet down, maybe you still feel this weird ache. Like, why don't some friendships ever really go deeper? Or why do the people I laughed with last month suddenly feel kind of far now? And now that you're in, you feel like you gotta work to stay in. Like, am I actually someone they want to be around? Or am I just someone that they tolerate? And so sometimes you find yourself checking if they're hanging out without you and reading into their replies, and it's like you finally got community, but somehow you still feel kinda alone. And maybe late at night, or on the walk home, this quiet question creeps in, and you think, do I really belong here? Would they still want me if I wasn't trying so hard? Or maybe instead of friendships, for you it's dating. Like maybe you've been wanting to have someone for a long time, and you're thinking, if I just had someone, then I'd finally be okay. And it's like, you're not even asking for anything crazy. You just want to be with someone who gets you, who's safe, who's there. And like, yeah, that's not a bad thing. But over time, it starts to carry more and more weight. Like you're not just hoping that they like you anymore, but just like me when I was in Japan, you're actually hoping that they'll make you feel whole. And maybe for some of you, you're already in a relationship, but there are moments where you still feel kind of off. Like maybe they don't fully see you, or they don't fully get you, or things just feel emotionally flat. And maybe there's some part of you that's like, wait, why do I still feel this way? I thought being with someone would finally take this ache away. But whether you're single or dating, if you're looking to that person to make you feel like you're enough, they can't carry that. They're human. They'll crumble under that pressure. No one can carry that. And don't get me wrong, your course, your friends, and a partner are all wonderful gifts from God. These aren't bad things, they're just terrible gods. And when we treat them like they can carry the weight of all our hopes, that's when they break and take us along with them. And so that's what an idol is. Anything we trust to give us enough and make us enough. And so whatever it is, whether it's your course, your friends, or your dating life, maybe you've also shouted, maybe you've also danced and bled, because deep down you're also hoping that something would finally make you feel like you have enough. That something would finally make you feel like you are enough. But instead, it wasn't what you hoped. Or maybe even worse, it left you bleeding. Because that's what idols do. They promise everything, and then they leave you bleeding. So we've spent a lot of time on the Baal prophets part of the story, but now let's look at Elijah, because here's where the story turns. So Baal gave his prophets silence when they shouted, danced, and bled. Let's see what God gives Elijah in verses 30 to 35. Well, it's a long passage, but basically, instead of 450 hysterical fanatics, Elijah, he steps up alone. No shouting, no dancing, no bleeding. He rebuilds the broken altar. He cuts the sacrificial bull in pieces. And then he completely soaks the sacrifice in water. And that's crazy for two reasons. Because one, like, doesn't he want to light the altar on fire? And two, it's like, bro forgot there was a drought. Because, like, he was pouring out water like it was free until it even filled up the trench around the altar. And there's no begging, there's no performing, but just faith alone. And then he prays, "Answer me, Lord. Answer me so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." No performing, but just a prayer to the God who actually listens. And in verses 38 and 39, God immediately answers, and fire blazes down, consuming everything, the sacrifice, the altar, and even the water, all burned up in an instant with nothing left behind. And instantly everyone falls down crying, "The Lord, He is God." Because that's what our story today is actually about. Not just drought or rain, but rather about who's actually God. Baal promises, but stays silent. The Lord answers, and he brings life. And Elijah's next move in verse 30, which is slaughtering the prophets of Baal, might feel really harsh to us. But actually, these prophets weren't harmless because they were leading people to trust in lies that never loved them. And they kept telling Israel, just give more to Baal, try harder, bleed if you have to, he'll answer. And the people gave their hearts, their bodies, their children, and all it gave them back was silence, emptiness, despair. So when God removes them, he's protecting his people because he's tearing out the poison, he's ending the abuse, and he's fighting for the people, the hearts of his people who have been bleeding for too long. And then, after 3.5 years of drought, finally rain begins to fall. Imagine that moment for the Israelites. Dust finally settling, the cracked earth drinking deeply, children running into the streets, laughing and dancing, mothers finally breathing again. And so this rain isn't just rain. It's God saying, you've been chasing empty gods, but I'm the one who actually hears you, sees you, and answers you. But even this story on Mount Carmel, as dramatic as it was just a preview. Because centuries later, there was going to be another showdown. Not on a mountain, but on a cross. Not with fire, but with blood. And this time, it wasn't Elijah standing alone. It was Jesus. And unlike Baal, Jesus didn't ask us to bleed for him. He bled for us. Not to get God's attention, but to get ours. Because idols say, perform for me, prove yourself, bleed, and maybe I'll answer. But Jesus says, I see you, I want you. I'll bleed so you don't have to. And so what he offers isn't just rain, but he's offering a world where your soul can finally breathe, where you don't have to wake up already behind, where you don't have to wonder whether people actually want you, and where your heart doesn't need to bleed just to be enough. It's the life we've been aching for. And it's real, and it's coming. Because one day the God who answered with fire will answer with healing that stops the bleeding. No more shouting, no more dancing, no more bleeding. Just you finally having enough, finally being enough. Because the God who bled for you is enough. So let me leave you guys with this. Maybe right now, you're still at the altar of Baal. Still clinging, still aching, still bleeding. And if that's you tonight, then Elijah's question is for you. How long will you waver between two opinions? Your idol, whatever it is, will not come through for you. It promises everything, and it leaves you bleeding. But Jesus, he bled for you. So maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to stop bleeding. Maybe it's time to come home. I might give you guys 30 seconds to 1 minute to kind of reflect on the things maybe you've been bleeding for, and then I'll end with prayer. Okay, let us pray. Dear God, we're sorry for choosing other things to make us feel like we are enough, to make us feel like we have enough. Thank you that you are turning our hearts back to you right now again. And thank you that you long to show us the things that we place our trust in for what they really are, and whether they can truly hold up to the weight of our hopes. And thank you that even now you still long to save us, and that you died so that you could save us. You bled for us, instead of wanting us to bleed for you. In your name we pray, amen.